Digital inclusion is no longer optional. With new regulations like the EU Accessibility Act, accessible design is now a requirement across industries and regions. The A4Q Certified Professional Digital Accessibility Certification equips you with practical skills to design and build digital experiences that include everyone. From WC, AG guidelines, and assistive tools to inclusive design, thinking, and accessibility testing, gain the knowledge to make a real impact. Learn, create, include. Get certified in digital accessibility.
Hello and welcome to this day 2 of the A4Q Summit. I'm delighted to have with me today Brynley Scully. Hello, Brynley.
Hello.
Brynley, very brief introduction, and then we'll get into what I know is going to be a really insightful and useful presentation. Brynley, you're the Chief Technology Officer of TESCOM based in Singapore, and I think you've been in the industry just a few years?
Just a few years, yes.
Years. So I'll just do a quick reminder to people that listen carefully, please, sit back and enjoy. But at the end of the session, please don't forget to go to Brynley's profile and you can vote for the best speaker of the presentation. Something that we're trying to remind everybody to do because it's really positive for the people who've been speaking to get that affirmation. I'm going to go off stage now and Brynley, leave you to talk about how can you prove testing is done and audit readiness in this very highly regulated world and in the age of AI systems. Enjoy, everybody. Thank you, Brynley.
Thanks, Debbie. So let's picture this. It's a beautiful morning. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, you're in a good mood, you're heading to the office with 2 cups of coffee. You settle down at your desk and you start checking emails. Then you see this email, we're being audited. You're now overwhelmed with a mix of emotions, fear, shock, anxiety, uncertainty, worry. For some of us, this has happened before. For others, this may happen in future, especially if we are working in regulated industries. My talk today, can you prove you tested it? Audit readiness for development and testing teams in regulated industries and AI systems. Lately, in the past few years, I've been personally involved in audits on dev and test teams, both as an auditor and auditee. So I bring to you today my experience from both sides of the table. And hopefully from my talk, you'll gain some insights on how you and your team can be better prepared for your next audit. Hello, everyone. My name is Brynley Scully. I'm from Singapore, and I've had 30 plus years experience, mostly in software testing across many industries. I'm also an accredited training instructor delivering the ISTQB CTFL course. I'm now CTO of TESCOM. TESCOM is a boutique software test and QA consultancy firm. And apart from my management and business development responsibilities, I'm also involved in project delivery, especially in auditing of technology projects. And that's what today's talk is all about. The first part of my talk will look at why audits matter and how they work. Now, failed audits aren't just embarrassing, they're expensive. We're talking fines that can wipe out budgets, halt projects, and yes, even end careers. But there's a pattern. 50 to 70% of audit findings aren't because your system is broken, They're because you cannot prove the work and activities you performed. This means documentation gaps, missing evidence, incomplete records. The good news, it's fixable. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to demonstrate diligence in your work. Here's a recently published case. I know it's a bit old, 2013, where a technology audit was conducted as a result of a major production incident. And if you look down the bottom, the audit findings revealed lapses in code deployment and testing. Audits are usually conducted on those working in regulated industries. And some of us here today work in these industries. These are sectors whose activities significantly affect national security, economic stability, public health, and even public revenue. Statutory authorities have oversight to ensure safety, integrity, and compliance with the law. In defense, we have ministries or departments such as the United States Department of Defense, the UK Ministry of Defense, who supervise military systems, classified technologies, defense contractors to safeguard national security. In finance, central banks, such as the US Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, they oversee banks, insurers, capital markets to maintain financial stability and also to protect consumers and investors. In healthcare, authorities like the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, regulate medical products, pharmaceuticals, clinical standards to ensure patient safety and treatment. And let's not forget taxation. Revenue authorities like the IRS administer and enforce tax laws to protect public finances. The core purpose of such regulators worldwide is to set standards, license the participants, monitor compliance, investigate misconduct, and enforce corrective action. In different sectors, there are different frameworks, but the underlying principles are remarkably similar. In the finance sector, if you handle payment data or customer information, you're dealing with SOC 2, Sarbanes-Oxley, ISO 27000. These focus heavily on data protection and access controls. In government systems, OWASP frameworks for cybersecurity, ISO 9001 for quality improvement. These are regularly used for auditing. The frameworks may differ in detail, but all they want is the same thing: proof that you know what you're doing and you can demonstrate it consistently. Under those regulatory frameworks, auditing is usually done regularly, from every 6 months for independent cybersecurity testing to maybe annually for ISO audits. However, audits do happen outside the regulatory frameworks. And in my experience in Singapore, I've recently led my audit team in a one-time audit for a firm in a regulated industry. Their aim was to have an independent third-party audit to uncover gaps and deficiencies in their software testing so that they can work on remediating them and eventually take their testing practice to the next level. They wanted to improve their testing, and they saw audits as a means to get targeted information on where to improve. I've also conducted audits on systems after they've experienced major production incidents, where the national regulators have come in and advised the firms to conduct independent third-party audits on code and testing. Here's a recently published case where the technology audit is being done as a result of a major production incident. But who are these auditors and where do they come from? Well, there are three personas here. The reviewer comes from within the project. This is the peer your buddy looking over your shoulder and say, wait, why are we shipping that? The best case, he catches obvious mistakes before they become disasters. The worst case, it becomes a rubber stamp because they're friends with and investmates with the developer. Internal auditors come from within the organization. This is the person management hired to keep everyone honest. They know your systems, your culture, your shortcuts. The pros are they understand your constraints. The cons, they might be just too familiar while you cut corners. Then there's the external auditor. These are people from outside the organization, the fresh eyes, the person with no loyalty to your deadline excuses. The pros are they're objective. They bring best practice from other industries. And the cons is they just don't understand that's just how we do it here. But you notice the spectrum at the bottom. Independence increases as we move from left to right. The reviewer, most bias risk. The external auditor, most objective. You may want to have all three or a combination of them because they each catch different things. As an auditor, I usually conduct audits using a four-step approach. First, I interview the project team, not as an interrogation, but to understand context, delivery pressures, constraints, tooling, release cadence, and how testing was actually performed versus how it was planned. Second, I conduct an independent review of the artifacts, including requirements, test cases, automation scripts, defect logs, CI/CD pipelines, coverage reports, source code. These is to validate the evidence rather than just relying on verbal opinion. This helps to corroborate the information gathered at the interviews. Third, I perform a structured gap identification analysis, mapping observed practices against defined standards, risk profiles, industry best practice to identify control weaknesses, to identify coverage blind spots, to identify process breakdowns. And finally, we draft and present our findings in a pragmatic, risk-prioritized manner, focusing not just on what went wrong, but on actionable remediation recommendations that the team can realistically implement. You see, the goal is not fault finding, it is strengthening our delivery confidence and reducing downstream risk. These four principles underpin every audit in every framework. Traceability. The auditors want to follow a thread. Show me requirement, show me the associated test cases, show me their test results, show me the deployment. If you can do that, you're 80% of the way there. Documentation. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. That's the auditor's worldview, and arguing about it won't help you. Control effectiveness. It's not enough to have a process on paper. You need evidence that the process actually runs and catches problems. Clear trails. Auditors need confidence that the records cannot be tampered with after the fact. This is where version control and timestamp logs become critical. Now let's go into this a little bit deeper and understand what auditors are looking for in terms of evidence in the project teams. Here I'm going to give you some essentials across 2 slides. The RTM is your best friend. It's a simple matrix, requirements in rows, test cases in columns, check marks where they intersect, bonus points if you include design documents, code modules, and defects. Test plans. Now don't overthink this. Don't make it too complicated. Scope, what you're testing, objectives, why, timelines, when, and resources, who, and the environment, where. That's it. Test cases need to be clear, good coverage across positive and negative scenarios, map each one to at least one requirement, use IDs, and make them searchable. Execution results must include who ran it, when, what environment, pass or fail results, defects raised. Automation test logs from your CI/CD pipeline, they're gold here. Continuing our evidence list, defect logs. You need to show the defect life cycle, raised, assigned, fixed, retested, closed. Severity and priority ratings matter. Auditors look for whether high severity or high priority defects were actually addressed before release. Code reviews, who reviewed them, when, what was changed, any issues found. Even a simple GitHub pull request history satisfies this if you're disciplined enough about it. Change control is huge. Every change needs a request, justification, impact assessment, approvals, testing, and deployment. And this is where many teams fall down. They do the work, but they don't document the approval chain. Environment configurations. Which versions and what were we running when we tested? Can we reproduce that environment? This becomes critical for investigating production issues. Here are 4 simple rules for documentation that can actually help you. Document as you go, not after the fact. Now, auditors can smell retrofitted documentation. It's inconsistent, it's got weird gaps, and lacks the natural messiness of real work. Standardization. Here, templates are your friend. Document test cases the same way. Document change requests the same way. This makes project work easier for the project team, but also for the auditors. Clarity, right for the intelligent stranger. The auditor may not know your domain deeply, but they understand software development and software testing. Don't use too much insider jargon or assume context. And you know what? These documents can also be used to coach new joiners in your team. Sufficiency. Here's a Goldilocks zone, right? Too little documentation, you can't prove compliance. Too much documentation, you can't maintain it or find anything. Document what matters. Skip what doesn't. Find that sweet spot. Now we get into the actual code. This is where developers either show their professionalism or not. Readability and style consistency. If we have to hire a linguist to understand the code, we have a problem. Naming conventions, spacing, comments, all these matter. Inconsistent style just isn't ugly. It's a sign nobody's reviewing the code properly, and it's also introducing risk into source code maintenance. Modularity and structure. Spaghetti code is not a feature. The auditors want to see a logical separation of concerns, reusable components, and functions that actually do one thing. If changing one feature breaks 6 other things, then your architecture is really crying for help. Complexity and simplicity of logic. Complex doesn't equal smart. Auditors want to see elegant solutions, not code that requires a PhD to decipher. If your function is 500 lines long and with 12 levels of nesting, that's not complexity, that's code at risk, and your job security at risk too. Duplication and dead code. Copy-pasting coding is lazy. Dead code that's never removed is clutter and bloatware. Put your code on a diet. Error handling and robustness. What happens when things go wrong? If your code just crashes silently, that's a finding. Auditors want to see try-catch blocks, graceful degradation, and meaningful error messages. Hard coding of values, hard-coded credentials, database connections, API endpoints, these are security nightmares waiting to happen. Configuration should be external, environment-specific, and auditable, not buried in code. You will be surprised how many times I have raised audit findings for hard-coded values. Logging and auditability. If it's not logged, it didn't happen. We need to trace what the system did, when it did it, and why. Comprehensive logging lets us investigate issues, prove compliance, and very important from the cybersecurity perspective, identify suspicious activity. Inline explanations. Comments should not be optional. They explain why decisions were made, not just what the code does. Developers who maintain the code for auditors, we need context. Context for the auditors, context for the team as well. So clean code isn't just about perfection. It's about respect for the team, for the support engineers, for your future self, and of course your auditors, but more importantly, for the organization. Now let's move to software testing. Here are things what auditors are looking for. Good test coverage is like insurance. You don't know you need it until something breaks. The question is not how much coverage do we have? It's, are we testing the right stuff? Because 100% coverage on features nobody uses is just unnecessary theater. Risk-based testing is where you stop testing everything and start testing smart. Your payment flow deserves more attention than your About Us page. Auditors will look for such imbalances in your focus areas. Regression testing is your time machine. It asks, what did we break that used to work before? If you're not running regression tests, you're just hoping new features didn't accidentally delete the entire database, that's not a strategy, that's a prayer. Auditors will examine your regression test strategy, especially for your high-risk features. Quality gates. Quality gates are like bouncers at an exclusive club. Some code is too ugly to get in. The problem? Everyone wants to bypass the bouncer when they're drunk or under deadline pressure. And that's when bad things get released. You need to show evidence that you're complying with your quality gate strategy. Traceability to test cases and results. This is your receipts. Auditors need to see what got tested, how did it get tested, what happened. Without traceability, you've got orphaned tests nobody understands and requirements nobody tested. It's a mess. Auditors may examine your traceability matrix in detail to look for such gaps. In defect management, the defects are our treasure maps. Each one tells us where the product has weak spots. If you're not tracking them systematically, you're not learning, you're just repeating the same mistakes. Auditors would look at your defect management process and how defects are managed to closure. And adherence to test plans. A test plan that nobody follows is just creative fiction. Auditors don't like fiction. You want to show the auditors you plan to test X, you actually tested X, and here's the proof. Test data anonymization. Many of us, we test with real production data in test environments. That is like a data privacy lawsuit waiting to happen. Mask it, anonymize it, secure it. Regulators will love you. Your customer lawyers will thank you. You do not need to know the credit card details or the bank balance of that annoying neighbor living down the street. Understanding what auditors evaluate helps you prepare. Effectiveness of control: is your control process theoretically sound? If you say all code changes require review by a development lead, that is a well-designed control. Consistency: if you said something to the auditor verbally when interviewed, back it up with evidence. Inconsistency between verbal response and documented evidence raises suspicion. Completeness and accuracy: are there gaps in the documentation? Are the dates realistic? Auditors develop instincts for incompleted or retrofitted records. If you do something once, that's nice. Auditors want to see you doing it the same way every time. Process consistency and repeatability is key. So good auditors can spot red flags easily. Missing documentation is obvious, but incomplete documentation is worse. It suggests you're aware you need the documentation, but you're not following through. Inconsistencies are deadly. Your process document says 3 levels of approval, but your examples only show 1 level, which is true. Auditors will assume the worst. If you cannot demonstrate control execution, where you may have a beautiful process document, but zero evidence the process runs, this control apparently just exists on paper. Then an important thing is the segregation of failures. If the same person writes the code, tests it, approves deployment, then you have no independent verification. For regulated industries, some level of segregation of duties is important. Otherwise, it becomes a fundamental control weakness. Version control isn't just for developers anymore. It's an audit requirement. Git or similar systems give you everything: who changed what, when, why. Commit messages matter. Auditors love this because it's tamper-proof. You can't change history without leaving traces. Critical systems need extra rigor. Tamper-evident logs, digital signatures on approvals. In finance and defense, this is often mandatory. CI/CD pipelines are beautiful from an audit perspective. They automatically log every build, every test run, every deployment. Configure your pipeline to retain these logs, and you've got a complete audit trail with zero extra effort. Pro tip here, right? Treat your deployment approvals like code. Store them in version control as text files with signatures. Technology is our friend in audit preparation. Test management platforms like Zephyr, Qtest, and even well-configured Jira provide built-in traceability. Requirements linked to tests, tests linked to executions, executions linked to defects, RTMs are automatic. Log aggregation systems like Splunk collect audit trails automatically from all your systems. Query them during audits and answer all the questions in real time. Document management with version control, SharePoint, Confluence, even Git repositories. Version every document, track who changed it, maintain approval records. Then there's the automation test tools. Selenium, Playwright, Tosca, they demonstrate commitment to consistent, human, error-free test execution, especially in the area of regression testing. And if it is set up well, it's able to take screenshots, capture logs, all very useful evidence for audits. An effective audit finding isn't just about identifying a problem, it's about telling a complete story. This slide shows the 5 critical elements that make an audit finding actionable and defensible. Written by the auditor, it starts with a clear, concise title. It should immediately communicate the nature of the finding without jargon. Think of it as the headline. The description will provide information on what happened, what have we found, that kind of context. It will include relevant facts, scope, affected areas, and frequency. Impact, this is where we connect the finding to the business consequence. What's the real world effect? Could it lead to undetected bugs, compliance violations, poor product quality? The impact should be tangible and relevant to the audience. Sometimes metrics are possible. X% of test cases lacked proper documentation. Or why defects slipped past QA. Severity, establish a clear severity scale, high, medium, low. Agree with the auditors the definition before the audit starts. Severity should be consistent across all the findings. This helps stakeholders prioritize remediation and resource allocation. Then we have the recommended remediation actions. Each audit finding should end on a constructive note. It should provide specific, actionable recommendations with clear ownership and suggested timelines. So this structured approach ensures audit findings are taken seriously and actually drive change and not just filed away and put on the shelf. Now let's look at severity classification, because this directly drives both business impact and remediation urgency. It's the bridge between identifying the problems and fixing them. The higher the severity, the faster you need to act, and the more critical the consequence. For low severity, these low severity findings are important for continuous improvement. They're not crisis level. Think of it as technical debt or process refinements. For example, the test case could be better organized, but it's still functioning, it's still providing value. Medium findings require attention, but not at an emergency level. They represent gaps that could lead to problems if left unattended, but they're manageable. Here we're looking at weeks to remediate. The impact areas typically include operational or process level concerns. High severity. This is where things start to get serious. These findings carry real business consequences if not addressed immediately. We're looking at days to fix. Impact can span multiple dimensions: financial impact, potential losses, cost of rework, revenue at risk, safety impact, product reliability, user safety concerns, regulatory impact, compliance violations, audit failures, legal exposure, and national security impact, potential risk to national infrastructure, data sovereignty, or exposure of sensitive government or defense-related information. The remediation messaging is, notice how the remediation timeline and the impacts escalate together. This isn't coincidental, it's by design. The severity classification should drive resource allocation. Your audit finding should tell the stakeholders, here's what's wrong, here's how bad it could get, and here's how fast you need to fix it. When auditors present these findings, they're clear on what each severity level means for your organization. Now, the definitions you can tweak and agree by industry and according to your risk appetite. So always ask, does this remediation timeline align with our risk tolerance? If a high severity finding sits unaddressed for months, either the auditor's credibility is at risk or the project team don't take the audit findings very seriously. So let's prepare for the actual audit conversation. These questions may come up at every audit. How do you ensure all requirements are tested? Your answer should reference the RTM and your test coverage metrics. Walk them through the process. Requirements enters the system, gets linked to test cases, coverage is tracked, and so on. Demonstrate the traceability. This is where you pull the RTM and show requirement, design, code, test, deployment. If you can do this real time, you're golden. Change control process, describe the flow, the request, approval, testing, deployment. Show them actual examples with approval records and test results. Then production validation. How do you verify the software works in production? Smoke tests, monitoring, user acceptance. Document the processes and have the examples and the evidence ready. More questions from the auditor. What process or artifacts require approvals? Now show evidence. The translation is proof that someone actually reviewed this before it shipped. Auditors are looking for change requests, peer reviews, manager sign-offs, test completion checklists, something that shows a human eyeballed it. Approvals are not red tape, they're your safety net. What coding standards are expected from developers? Now this filters the chaos. Do you have a coding standard? Is it documented? Does anyone actually follow it? This is especially useful for distributed teams, geographically distributed teams. Auditors want to see your style guide, your naming conventions, your architecture patterns, security requirements, the box. Auditors may also even interview developers to determine their awareness of such standards and their level of compliance. How did you check for compliance to quality gates? Now the translation here is, did you actually stop bad stuff from shipping? Or do you just say, we have great quality gates? So auditors are digging for gate reviews, blocked releases, evidence of enforcement, and deviations. If every single release passed the gate perfectly, either your gates are fake or you're incredibly lucky. In either case, the auditor's suspicions are aroused. It's okay to have quality gate failures. That's proof they're actually working and limiting your risk exposure. How did you ensure good test coverage? This is prove you tested the right things question. So you need to show the auditors your coverage metrics, risk assessments that drive coverage decisions, evidence that critical paths got tested. Just don't throw percentages to auditors. Oh, we have 85% coverage. That means nothing if you're testing the login screen 6 times and never testing the payment flow. Coverage should map to risk. High risk, we should have high coverage. Low risk, an appropriate level of coverage. So these questions, they're your interview. Answer them well and you look professional. Fumble and they become audit findings. Audit communication skills matter as much as documentation. Listen first, don't rush to answer. Make sure you understand what the auditors are asking for. It's okay to clarify. Are you asking about our development testing or are you asking about production validation? Be concise in your answers. Auditors appreciate directness. Answer the question asked, not the question you wish they asked. Evidence-based answers, don't say we have a process for that. Say, here's our process document, and here are 3 examples of how we executed it from last month. Show, don't just tell only. Be honest about gaps. If something is missing or broken, say so. Explain how you're addressing it. Auditors expect to find issues. They appreciate honesty and remediation plans. Never guess or make up answers. I don't know, but I'll find out and I'll get back to you by the end of the day is a perfectly acceptable response. Another tip if you're being audited is use the STAR framework for complex questions. It keeps your answers structured and complete. I'll give you an example. The question from the auditor may look like, how did you handle a critical defect that was found just before release? So for situation, we discovered a data corruption bug during the final UAT, 3 days before scheduled go live for our payment system. Task: we needed to fix the bug, verify the fix, and verify that the fix did not introduce new issues, and determine if we could still make the deadline safely. Action: we assembled the team, root cause, we conducted root cause on the issue, and it was around a race condition in the code. We implemented a fix with additional locking. We ran regression tests. We did focus testing on transaction scenarios. The result: here's the defect record showing the life cycle. Here are the test results post-fix. Here's the go, no-go decision record where we delayed the release by 1 week. And now the system has been stable since deployment. A complete answer. The STAR approach is really good here. I'd like to share with you some practical takeaways you can take. This one for the development team. Here's a checklist. Every commit in version control with meaningful messages. Fixed bugs doesn't just cut it. Fixed null pointer and payment validated per ticket is what you need. Make it meaningful. Code reviews must be documented. GitHub peer reviews, GitLab merge requests, formal review records include who reviewed them and where. RTM link requirements to code. Now, this doesn't have to be fancy. Even comments in the code referencing requirement IDs is enough to establish traceability. Archive your security scan results. Don't just run SonarQube. Keep the reports. Show the trend over time. This kind of checklist could be part of your definition of done for every user story. Now, I'm not forgetting the testing team. The testing team checklist is equally critical. Map every test case to at least one requirement. Calculate and report coverage. Auditors love metrics when they're backed up by actual traceability. Test execution must include environment details. Which version of the system, which test environment, which data set, who ran it and when. Automated tests from CI/CD automatically capture this. Defect lifecycle matters. Raised, assigned, fixed, retested, each state with timestamps and orders. Show that critical defects were resolved before the release. Go ahead and develop your own checklists and walk through them frequently with your team. Now, if you thought traditional software audits were fun, wait until you add AI systems. Auditors are increasingly focused on AI, and they're asking new questions. Where did your training data come from? Can you prove it? Bias testing. In regulated industries, especially finance and government, you must demonstrate that your models do not discriminate unfairly. Document your testing methodologies and results. Model versioning. Just like code, models need version control. Which version is in production? Can you reproduce the training process that it created? What were the hyperparameters? Explainability. Can you explain why the model made a specific decision? In regulated domains, just saying the neural network said so will not be acceptable. You need audit trails of AI decisions and the ability to explain them. Getting more specific about AI audit evidence and what the auditors want to see, they want to see documentation of your training data. What data sets? From where? Under what license? What pre-processing? What masking for sensitive data? If you just scraped all of this from the internet, that might be a problem in regulated industries. Model cards are becoming standard practice. Think of them as data sheets for models, architecture, training process, performance metrics, known limitations appropriate use cases. Google and others have published templates that you can use. Adversarial testing. Have you tried to break the model? In defense and finance, red teaming is increasingly mandatory. Document your adversarial testing process and what you found. Monitoring. Models degrade over time. Show that you're actively monitoring for drift, degradation, and unexpected behavior. Alert logs and response procedures matter here. Here's a special audit checklist for AI systems. Document your training data completely. The source, the quality metrics, pre-processing, any filtering or sampling. Can you recreate the training data if needed? Validation must include bias testing. In regulated industries, they're very important. Version your models like code, model artifacts, training scripts, parameters. You should be able to reproduce any model version exactly. Monitor in production. Track precision accuracy, detect drift, log decisions for high-stake predictions. Show that you're actively managing the model post-deployment. As AI regulation increases, this checklist will become as mandatory as software documentation. And some places around the world already have some defined guidelines for AI governance or responsible AI. Learn what they are and apply them to your projects. So let me summarize my talk. You can't document everything perfectly. Use a risk-based approach. Identify your highest risk components: authentication, payment processing, data handling, access controls. These get extra attention in both development and audit. Prioritize your effort. If you have limited time, make sure your critical systems have complete documentation. Less critical systems can have lighter documentation. Guide the auditor. Proactively show them how you have mitigated high risks. This builds confidence, and this can result in lighter scrutiny on the lower risk areas. Conduct risk management throughout the SDLC. Show risk assessments at requirements phase, threat modeling during design, security testing during QA, monitoring in production. This demonstrates mature thinking. The best audit strategy is to audit yourself first. Internal audit programs find gaps when you can still fix them. No penalties, no public findings, just improvement opportunities. The cultural benefit is that teams that experience internal audits get comfortable with the process. They understand what auditors want and build better practices naturally. The statistics are real. Organizations with an active internal audit program see significantly fewer findings in external audits. 30 to 40% reduction is typical. Quality improvement. Internal audits provide regular feedback on documentation and process quality. Teams improve continuously rather than in crisis mode before external audits. So start small. Quarterly reviews of sample projects, check for basic documentation, completeness, and start to build from there. Now remember these 5. If you've worked in software test or QA, you've probably seen them all, multiple times in the same project. Broken requirements traceability matrix. This is, we know what we're building problem. Without traceability, you've got requirements floating around with no anchor to test cases, no anchor to code. In other words, how do we know we're testing the right thing? It's like building a house without blueprints or hoping the electricals work and the doors fit into the door frames. Lack of version control. Developers working with poor version control is just leading to a horror show of recurring defects. No version control, no audit trail, no way of knowing who broke what, when, and why. Poor compliance to quality gates. Quality gates exist for a reason, but apparently that reason isn't important when someone's got a deadline. Skipping quality gates do not make products ship faster, and in fact, it has the reverse effect. Hard coding of values. Like I've said before, I've seen so many instances of this. Apparently, it's a developer's favorite hobby, hiding constants and values in code like Easter eggs, and then leaving the company. Inconsistent use of coding methods. Did you know that when you're using the round method in C#, you can round to even or round away from 0? Both are legitimate methods. Stick to one. Consistency matters not just for readability, but for data accuracy, maintainability, testing, and everyone's sanity. The good news is all this is fixable. They're not architectural disasters, they're process and discipline issues, which means you have a clear path to success. So here's what I want you to walk away with today. 5 principles that will make you ready for the dreaded audits. Document now, not later. Memory fades, context gets lost. The developer who wrote that code is gone. If you don't document as you go, you'll be reverse engineering your work 3 months later. The future you will thank you for writing it down. If there's no evidence, it didn't happen. This just isn't an audit philosophy, it's survival. Screenshots, logs, test results, version control history. They're your ammunition. Without it, you've got nothing to back you up. AI systems need extra love. AI and ML systems are black boxes on steroids. They need additional scrutiny, not less. Your traditional software testing playbook is not enough. You need adversarial testing, bias detection, continuous monitoring. Show the auditor you put that extra love into the design and testing of the AI systems. Use checklists. Don't rely on memory or intuition. Checklists are your safety net. Create checklists. Create audit checklists to self-audit yourselves. These can be based on the compliance frameworks and will help you and your team more confidently. And guess what? Test and QA professionals make good auditors. We already know how to think critically. We already know how to find software bugs. We're a natural fit to be auditors ourselves. We have that quality mindset. What could go wrong? And that's exactly what an auditor needs. Our software testing technical background is valuable, so lean to it. Auditing is not about catching people red-handed. It's about building systems and processes that prevent problems from happening in the first place. So go back to your teams, implement these principles, and remember, every audit finding you find, you prevent it better than catching it later. I hope that after listening to me today, and the next time you receive "We've been audited" email, you will not have anxiety because you will be ready. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Brynley. That was incredibly informative, lots of very pragmatic advice, and I have to say, delivered with such clarity and eloquence. Thank you so much. We're really up against the clock now, jam-packed with good information. Let's do one quick question, Brynley, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
Okay, let's have a look here. What do delivery teams need to look out for when building AI systems in regulated industries?
Right. So in regulated, for AI systems in regulated industries, I think they keep the classic SDLC evidence. Yeah? That's necessary. But add the AI specific artifacts. So data lineage. Where did the trading data come from? Where did the test data come from? How was it cleaned? How was it mask governed? Secondly is the model's life cycle. Version the models, the training configurations. Risk and bias testing, document them, document the performance, fairness, robustness, drift monitoring, and then explainability. Not only explainability and how did the AI make those decisions, but also you need to demonstrate to the auditors the human in the loop is there to override any model. So these are key things that will be really useful.
Thank you. Very relevant and useful. Brynley, we've hit time off, I'm afraid. I'm sure there will be more questions, and we can always come back to you afterwards and ask you if you can help answer some of those. Quick reminder to everybody to stay tuned for further sessions in the A4Q Summit, and also to pop over to the website and find Brynley's profile to vote. Brynley, thank you so very much for that. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Digital inclusion is no longer optional. With new regulations like the EU Accessibility Act, accessible design is now a requirement across industries and regions. The A4Q Certified Professional Digital Accessibility Certification equips you with practical skills to design and build digital experiences that include everyone. From WC, AG guidelines, and assistive tools to inclusive design, thinking, and accessibility testing, gain the knowledge to make a real impact. Learn, create. Include: get certified in digital accessibility,